Chapter 14. The Grangerfords Take Me In. I made a safe landing and climbed up the bank. It was so dark I could see only a little way ahead, but I went poking along over rough ground. Suddenly I saw a big old-fashioned double log house right before me, and a lot of dogs jumped out and raised such a howling and barking, and I didn't dare move another peg. In about a minute, somebody spoke out of the window without putting his head out. "Who is there?" "George Jackson, sir. I'm only a boy." "What do you want? What are you prowling around here this time of night for? Hey!" "I don't want anything, sir. I only want to go along by, but the dogs won't let me. I wasn't prowling around. I fell overboard off the steamboat." "Oh, you did you? Look here. If you are telling the truth, you needn't be afraid. Nobody will hurt you, but stand right where you are." I heard the people stirring around in the house now and saw a light. The man cried out, "Snatch that light away, Betsy, you old fool. Put it on the floor behind the front door. Bob, are you and Tom at your places by the door?" "All ready." "Now, George Jackson, do you know the Shepherdsons?" "No, sir, I never heard of them." "Well, that may be so and it may not be. Now step forward and don't hurry. Come mighty slow. If there's anybody with you, let him keep back or he'll be shot. Come along now. Come slow. Push the door open yourself, just enough to squeeze in." I took one slow step at a time. There wasn't a sound, only I could hear my heart. The dogs kept still too, but they waited right behind me. I heard the people inside unlocking and unbarring the door. I put my hand on it and pushed a little. Somebody said, "There, that's enough. Put your head in." I did, but I judged they would take it off. The candle was on the floor, and there stood 3 big men with guns pointed at me. The oldest was gray and about 60. The other 2, 30 or more, all fine, handsome men. The old gentleman said, "There, I reckon it's all right. Come in." They locked and barred the door as soon as I was in. Then they picked up the candle and took a good look at me. "Why, he ain't no Shepherdson about him." Then the old man said he hoped I wouldn't mind being searched for arms, only to make sure. He didn't pry into my pockets, only felt outside and said it was all right. Then the sweetest old gray-headed lady comes up. "Why, bless you, Saul, the poor thing is wet as he can be, and maybe he's hungry." "True for you, Rachel, I forgot." "Betsy," the old lady says, "you fly around and get him something to eat as quick as you can, poor thing. And one of you go up and wake Buck and tell him, oh, here he is now. Buck, take this little stranger and get the wet clothes off of him and give him some of yours." Buck looked about as old as I was, 13 or 14, though he was a little bigger. He was gaping, digging one fist into his eyes, frowsy-headed, and he was dragging a gun. "Ain't they no Shepherdsons around?" They said no, it was a false alarm. If they had been, I'd have got one. They all laughed, and Bob said, "Why, Buck, they might have scalped us all. You've been so slow coming." "Well, nobody called me. I'm always kept down. I don't get any show." "Never mind, Buck, my boy," said the old man. "You'll have show enough, all in good time. Don't you fret about it. Go along with you now, and don't do as your mother told you." When we got upstairs to Buck's room, he found me a shirt and pants, and I put them on. He asked me what my name was, but before I could tell him, he started to tell me about a blue jay and a young rabbit he had caught. Then he asked me where Moses was when the candle went out. I said I didn't know. "Well, guess," he said, "but I don't know where he was." "Where was he?" "Why, he was in the dark." "Well, if you already know, why ask me?" "Why blame it? It's a riddle, don't you see? Say, how long are you going to stay here?" "You got to stay always. We can have boomin' times. Do you own a dog? My dog will go in the river and bring out chips that you throw in. Are you all ready to go down? Come along, old hoss." While I was eating, they asked me questions. I told them how all my family had lived on a little farm down in Arkansas, how my sister Mary Ann had run off, got married, and never was heard of again, how Bill went to hunt them and he never was heard of again, how Tom and Mort died, how nobody was left but me and Pap, and he trimmed down to nothing on account of his trouble, how Pap died and I took what was left and started up the river on a steamboat and fell overboard. They said I could have a home there as long as I wanted it. After a while, everybody went upstairs to bed. I went to bed with Buck. When I waked up the next morning, I couldn't remember what I had told them my name was. So when Buck waked up, I said, "Bet you can't spell my name." "I bet you I can. Georgejackson. There now," he said. "Well, you did it. I didn't think you could." It was a mighty nice family and a mighty nice house, too. In the parlor, there was a big fireplace with brass dog irons that could hold up a saw log. On the mantel was a clock with a picture of a town on the lower half of the glass front. It was beautiful to hear that clock tick. As for striking, sometimes she would start in and strike 150 before she got tuckered out. Colonel Grangerford was a gentleman all over. He was well born, as the saying is, and that's worth as much in a man as it is in a horse. So the widow Douglas said. Pap always said so too, though he was no more quality than a mudcat himself. Every day Colonel Grangerford was clean shaved, and every day of his life he put on a clean shirt and a fresh suit of white linen. He was as kind as he could be. But when he straightened himself up and the lightning began to flicker from under his eyebrows, you wanted to climb a tree first and find out what was the matter afterwards. Everybody was always good-mannered where he was. When he and the old lady came down in the morning, all the family got out of their chairs to give them good day and waited standing while they were being seated. Then Tom and Bob went to the sideboard and mixed the glasses of bitters and handed him a glass, bowed and said, "Our duty to you, sir and madame." Colonel Grangerford and the old lady bowed the least bit and said, "Thank you," and so they drank all three. Bob was the oldest and Tom was next, tall, beautiful men with very broad shoulders and brown faces and black hair and eyes. There used to be 3 more sons, but they got killed. Miss Charlotte was 25, proud and grand, but good as she could be when she wasn't stirred up. Her sister, Miss Sophia, was only 20 and gentle and sweet like a dove. The old gentleman owned a lot of farms and over 100 slaves. Every white person had a servant. Mine had a very easy time because I wasn't used to having anybody do anything for me, but Bucks was on the jump most of the time. Sometimes a stack of people would come there from 10 or 15 miles around and stay 5 or 6 days. They would have parties on the river and picnics in the woods daytimes and balls at the house nights. The men brought their guns with them.